Well, we're here, Rob, to talk about job creation as a whole, because both candidates have made this the top priority. In your first ad, you mentioned it 5 times.
Yeah.
Jobs comes up. You also mentioned work in an additional time. So how important is it for you to stress job creation, and how important is it for people to understand what you mean by that?
Well, jobs is the #1 issue facing our state right now. And all of the other issues that we're struggling with, if we had more people working, a lot of those problems would be reduced, if not eliminated. And anyone who is running for this seat, if they don't understand that jobs is priority #1, I don't think they understand our district. And it's really inexcusable that we've been 15 straight years above the national average in unemployment as a state, despite all the talent here, despite all the innovation and the great resources we have. We ought to be doing much better, and especially where we're located on the Pacific Rim. We're the envy of districts and states all over the country, and yet we continue to lag behind in job creation.
With the approach for job creation, the tax overhauls, the promoting of the trade, and the balancing of the budget, how can you say that specifically will create jobs? I mean, how do you know that this plan will work in terms of job creation?
Because of the candidates running in this election, I'm the only one who's created a job before. And I've been doing it for 16 years. I've created 60 jobs. I've helped launch 500 careers around the country. I know what it takes for a small business owner like myself to be able to take the risk, make the investment in creating a job. And that is, I need certainty. I need certainty in the tax environment. I need also for my products or services to be promoted, to have markets to go to. And I also need to have some constancy when it comes to fiscal policy. And if our government is creating this very haphazard environment because they can't balance a budget, because they continue to spend and borrow more than we have, then that just causes business people like me and those who want to grow a business, those who want to start a career, it makes them sit on their hands. So I wouldn't expect that a lawyer turned politician would understand this, because she's never created a job. You know, and I have. I'm a career builder and she's a career politician. There's a big difference.
Mm-hmm. So in the example of your business, I wouldn't think that trade would come into play in Game Face.
Not specifically in my business, but I look at the great industries that we have here in the 1st District, whether you're talking about the high-tech sector, you're talking about agriculture, you're talking about the fisheries and the timber that we have here. There's so many opportunities for us to let the world have access to our products. And if we don't have a representative that understands the value of trade, even President Obama is with me on this. He thinks, he has claimed that trade will grow hundreds of thousands of jobs throughout our country. And here in Oregon, it was noted that about 268,000 jobs right here in the Portland region alone are dependent on international business. So obviously, this is a winning or selling point for our district if we had a representative who understood it, who had a background in it, and could promote that which we do best.
Talking about how you've created jobs, I want to understand your credentials on this.
You bet.
Make your case to the public. I mean, you say you've created jobs, but how did you create jobs?
Well, I started my small business out of my bedroom in 1995 in Tualatin with my wife. And then over time, as we discovered that our service was in fact more valuable and desirable by our industry, the natural inclination is, well, we want to grow it. We want to provide it to more people. How do you do that? You bring in employees. You hire. And so you figure out through your budget, how can you do this? Because it's not an easy thing to hire. There's a lot of sacrifice. There's obviously a lot of risk. There's a lot of things you have to do to make sure your employees are happy, productive, and that it's not just a quick fix. It's not just a temporary job, but it's a career. And so we made those measured decisions, and over 16 years, 60 people have come onto our payroll. We've met a payroll 195 straight months. We know how to sign the front of a paycheck. My opponent's never done any of those things. And when you look at what the pressing issue is of the day, not only nationally but also locally, it's how are we going to put Americans back to work, especially right here in Oregon. So wouldn't it stand to reason that we need someone who has experience doing that?
You're clear on the number 60. That's the number of jobs you've created.
Absolutely.
Okay.
And I've launched 500 careers through the services that our company has been involved in.
You wouldn't call that creating those jobs, though?
No. I misspoke one time in the busyness of a campaign and a speech. I misspoke one time, but everyone knows who's listened to me, who's read what I've written. I always talk about launching 500 careers.
How does the math work out on that, creating 60 jobs over 16 years? And to me, that's almost 4 jobs a year. So what does that mean for your company, that you have 4 employees a year that you create, or what does that mean?
Well, it just means that over the life of our business, we've had 60 employees. Some years, when we first started, it was just me and my wife for the first year and a half. Then we began to add people. At one time in the last decade, we were employing at one time around 20 people. But over the flow of any small business, you have turnover, you have attrition, you have people that move on to other positions, move out of state because of family situations or health reasons or whatever it may be. Or you encourage them to move on to bigger and better opportunities, and then you refill that position perhaps, or maybe you create another position. That's just the ebb and flow of running a small business.
It was 20 at the height of the business?
Yeah, it's about 20.
And was that full-time or part-time or a mix?
All full-time.
All full-time. And what is it now?
Now it's 6.
6 full-time? Is the business still growing? Are you focusing more on, you've been running a campaign, it seems, for a long time now, so is this more of your attention now on campaigning as opposed to your business?
Absolutely. My running for Congress is a full-time proposition, and obviously very few people have done that before, run for Congress, and so admittedly it takes you away from your business. And in our case, I did not want my employees to have to suffer or sacrifice because of my run for Congress. So we've tried to maintain as much constancy for them as we can. But and I check in on the business regularly. In fact, today, Monday afternoon, is our weekly conference call with the business, just to make sure I know what's going on and be helpful as much as I can be. But my employees recognize that when I decided to run for Congress, that this was a sacrifice they were going to make as well, because I'm not as accessible as I used to be. And my clients understand that as well. But I must say, the business is continuing to do well, continuing to gain clients and service existing clients. For example, we just finished an engagement with the Green Bay Packers. Just last week, the Los Angeles Angels of Anaheim called and want to do additional work with our firm next month, even though we just serviced them 2 months ago. We're currently engaged in some work with the Oregon State Athletic Department. So the business is moving. It's continuing to provide valuable services. It's impossible for me to be involved as much as I have been in the past.
You'd call it a success at this point.
Absolutely.
And does the lack of a physical location have any impact on how one might perceive the business?
I don't know how people would perceive it, but as far as us being able to provide services, valuable services on a continual basis to our clients, no, we don't need a storefront for our service-oriented business, especially when about 98, 99% of our clients are out of state. Now, the model that we used to have required a large space when we would bring people into our academy training. But the academy was discontinued when I started running for Congress. So the need for 6,800 square feet didn't exist anymore. So now our employers are working out of home offices, working virtually. And that's how we started the business back in the 90s. And that's the right model for us now.
Your ads that show you in an active business environment, do you think that's a fair representation of the types of jobs you've created?
I think when we just talk about what it takes to create a job, I know, because I've been there. Small businesses are all different. Some are in manufacturing, some are in distribution, some are in services. So when it comes to understanding what the mindset of a small business owner, the mindset of those who want to hire more, obviously my ad demonstrates I get it. And as I said, I'm the only candidate that's ever met a payroll before. I'm the only candidate running in this race who's ever signed the front of a check, who's ever had to meet a budget within a small business. And every political ad, of course, has a variety of environments within the ad. I don't think Senator Bonamici owns a farm, but she finds herself on a farm in her ad. I don't think she owns Mount Hood, which happens to be located in someone else's district, but she put it in her ad. So be it.
How much credit would you give another business owner who had 6 employees full-time working for them if they were to say, they're running for Congress and they've been able to create jobs? Would you give them credit as saying, that's 6 jobs and that's 6 jobs that wouldn't otherwise be there? Or would you look at it from a different lens and say, well, that's not thousands upon thousands of jobs that perhaps Oregon needs to really make a dent on the unemployment rate?
Well, again, you look over the course of my career, and I've created 60 jobs. And you look at what our company does, we've helped launch hundreds of careers, especially young people, who couldn't find a job when they came to us, who went through university, got a 4-year degree, sometimes a postgraduate degree, and they were still living in mom and dad's basement. And by coming to Game Face, we're able to provide them skills and make them more marketable and more valuable to a prospective employee. I would add, the other thing that our business does is we're about helping individuals become more productive in their existing job. That's what we do for clients all over the country. We've been doing that for years. So the size of your small business, to me, isn't what matters. The fact of the matter is that small businesses create more than 60% of the jobs in our state, whether that's one person working out of their garage or if it's a business of 400 people in Beaverton. We want all small businesses to thrive. We're not trying to play favorites with large businesses or small businesses.
I know your time is limited, so just a few more questions. Looking at your background, creating jobs versus Suzanne Bonamici's background in the legislative branch of the state of Oregon, do you give her any credit, I guess, for her experience in the legislative area? You're going to Congress. You're not running to see who's going to start their own business. So it's taking on a job in which you have to work with other members of Congress. Does that give her any leg up on you in the fact that she has that experience?
Well, I would say I released a jobs plan. I'd like to know where her jobs plan is. It's like, where's the plan, Suzanne? You've been in the legislature. What have you done to create jobs? What have you done really out of your own back pocket to create jobs, to make sacrifices? And we can either put a job creator in Congress, or we can put another lawyer turned politician, turned career politician. And I don't think that's what Oregon needs right now. I don't think it's what Congress needs, especially if you look at her legislative experience. She votes 98% of the time with her party. Now, isn't that the problem with Congress right now? There's too much partisanship. There's too much loyalty to a party as opposed to a people. And I've demonstrated in my career that I'll work with anybody who has a reasonable idea, who wants to cooperatively find results. And she's just pretty loyal to one party. And she has a more partisan record than a vast majority of the people in the legislature. And the only time she didn't vote with her party, she wasn't voting with Republicans. She was voting to the far left of her party. She voted to raise taxes and fees on small businesses throughout her legislative career. There are 60 times when she raised fees and taxes. How does that create jobs in Oregon?
Is there a way to distinguish, since you both have made job creation your top priority, who cares about it more? Who you think is putting more emphasis on it?
Absolutely. I think one way that the public can know is look at the first ad that each of us put out there. My first ad, as you mentioned earlier, was full of the discussion and the topic of jobs. In her first ad, she talks about her priorities, not one mention of the word jobs. So if she can't say it in her first ad when she's laying out her priorities for Oregon voters, what gives us any confidence to think she'll go back to Congress and talk about jobs?
One more question. In talking with her campaign today, they've raised the issue of the payroll tax cut. I wanted to get your position on that. Do you favor continuing that on, and do you see that as a way to create jobs, or would you rather see it go away?
I favor continuing the payroll tax cut because the American consumer needs certainty, just like American businesses need certainty in order to hire. But I'm tired of the quick or temporary fixes. We need wholesale change in our tax code. We need to reform it completely. And these Band-Aid approaches year after year, we've been having these conversations for 10 years, and we still don't have a sense of certainty or predictability in our economy. So we need people who don't want to just fix it till the next election. We need people who want to fix it long term. And we've done this before in our country. We did it as recently as 1997 with a Democrat president and a Republican House. They came together, they balanced the budget, they created a surplus, and they brought unemployment down to 4%. It can be done. We just can't afford more of the same, and I'm afraid that my opponent represents more of the same.
Would that affect how you would vote on an extension then?
Yes. Well, what I would say is let's pass it because it needs to be done now. Consumers need to know what their paycheck's going to look like next month, but we need to immediately get on the task of reforming the tax code, making it more fair, more predictable, and simpler.
Okay, so you are on the same page. You both have that same position on the extension of the payroll tax.
I don't know what her position is. That's mine.
Okay. And so
Okay.
you're going to clarify the number of people working right now at GameFace.
Okay. So we have 4 full-time employees currently and 2 part-time employees at this time. And I would put up my record of creating jobs over the last 16 years versus my opponent's record of doing that anytime. I look forward to doing that in more public forums.